On May 29, 2017, as the sun broke gently over Hamerton Zoo Park in Cambridgeshire, England, a calm morning descended into unspeakable horror. Rosa King, a woman whose life was built on love, for nature, for animals, and for the wild, would enter an enclosure, and never walk out again. For over a decade, she had cared for some of the planet's most dangerous creatures. But on this day, one of them turned. A 350-pound apex predator. A bond shattered in a heartbeat. What happened inside that enclosure? Why did safety protocols fail? And what was Rosa's final act before everything went dark? This is not just a story about loss. It's a story about passion, sacrifice, and the fine line between beauty and danger. Stay with us. Because what you're about to witness isn't just a tragedy. It's the final moments of a woman who gave her life to what she loved most, and paid the ultimate price. When the barrier between trust and terror is shattered. What do we learn about the wild? What do we learn about ourselves? After this story, you'll never walk through a zoo with the same eyes again. Because behind every cage is a bond built on trust. And sometimes, that trust is the very thing that breaks. If you believe in truth, if you stand for those whose cries were unheard, if justice moves you to your core, subscribe for the stories that must be remembered, and the voices that must never be silenced. Rosa King's story begins not with tragedy, but with light. A light that glowed in the eyes of a girl who found joy in the company of animals, long before she could spell their names. To those animals, she was more than a keeper. To her colleagues, more than a friend, and to the zoo, she was its heartbeat. Born in 1984 in a quiet village in England, Rosa grew up chasing butterflies in the fields behind her home, rescuing injured birds, and convincing her parents to let her keep frogs in the bathtub. Her love wasn't just a phase. It was a calling. By the age of 10, Rosa was already volunteering at local animal shelters. She would spend her weekends cleaning cages, feeding strays, and watching closely as veterinarians did their work. Everyone could see it, she had a gift. She didn't just love animals, she understood them. Rosa could calm the most frightened dog with just a whisper. It was like she spoke their language. After high school, Rosa pursued animal care with relentless focus. She earned her qualifications and began working with exotic animals. But her heart was always drawn to one kind in particular. Big cats. She found them majestic, powerful, misunderstood. Rosa had this magic with them. Where others were nervous, she was calm. She respected their power but never feared them. And they seemed to know that. By her early 20s, Rosa joined Hamerton Zoo Park in Cambridge. It wasn't long before she became the go-to keeper for the park's most dangerous residents. She formed close bonds with jaguars, tigers, panthers. And one day, she met the cat who would change everything. His name was Cicip. A rare, majestic Malayan tiger. Cicip was no ordinary animal. Temperamental, powerful, and unpredictable. But Rosa took to him instantly. She could read his moods. She knew when he was stressed, when he was playful, and when he needed space. There was trust there. It was beautiful to watch. She didn't just train the tigers. She lived for them. Long hours, unpredictable days. While others clocked out, Rosa stayed behind. Sometimes just to sit with the animals. Just to be there. Her co-workers say she was the first in and the last out. Every single day. She was the soul of the park. If something was wrong with one of the animals, Rosa felt it before anyone else did. There was a kind of quiet courage in her work. In a world where others saw claws and teeth, she saw connection. But even the strongest bond can falter in a single moment. Rosa knew the risks. She had trained for them, prepared for them, and lived with them every day. But no amount of love, no years of experience, can ever fully tame what nature made wild. And in the quiet corners of the zoo, where only trust and instinct guide your steps, one wrong move can change everything. He moved like smoke, silent and untouchable. Cicip was his name. But to those who saw him up close, he was something more. A force of nature dressed in gold and black. Malayan tigers are fading from the earth, not with a roar, but with a whisper. Fewer than 200 remain in the wild, fleeting shadows in a forest that is vanishing around them. And when one is born in captivity, behind steel and glass, he becomes more than just a tiger. He becomes a symbol. A relic. A dying lineage, caged in silence. Cicip never knew the jungle's call. He never felt soil beneath his claws or chased prey beneath moonlight. He was born into boundaries, into routine. Into the quiet hands of humans who loved him, but could never give him the wild he was made for. But he was never tame. That's the myth we tell ourselves, that routine can replace instinct. That affection can rewrite nature. He was raised carefully. Bottle-fed. Watched day and night. Rosa King was there for most of it. She knew him like few others could. Their bond. It was different. Almost maternal. Rosa spoke to Cicip softly, and he listened. She walked near his cage without fear. There was a rhythm between them, delicate, beautiful, and dangerous. Rosa had this way about her. With big cats especially. But with Cicip, it was like she could read his mind. Former co-worker said. But the human heart often ignores what the wild will not forget. In the months leading up to that tragic day, Cicip began to change. His patterns shifted. He'd pace longer. Stare harder. Refuse simple cues. It wasn't aggression. It was a silence. A warning wrapped in quiet. Keepers noticed. Some wrote informal notes. One described him as distant. Another said, he's not responding to Rosa the way he used to. But nothing concrete. Nothing actionable. Tigers in the wild roam for miles. They patrol, they hunt, and they test their dominance. In captivity, there's nowhere for those instincts to go. They simmer. They build. And sometimes, they boil over. Still, Rosa trusted him. Each day, she entered his world, alone. No weapon. No barrier. Just her voice. Her belief. Her bond. She said to me once, he knows me. He would never hurt me. Friend of Rosa reported. But Cicip wasn't just Rosa's tiger. He was a 300-pound predator. And predators don't make promises. Behaviorists warn of moments, those split seconds when even the calmest animal can snap. A shift in scent. A startled reaction. A sound just wrong enough to ignite instinct. No one can predict when. No one can stop it once it begins. Rosa knew him better than anyone. But did she see it? Did she feel the change? Did Cicip? Some say it was a tragic accident. Others whisper it was inevitable. But all agree, something in him had shifted. Cicip, majestic, rare, and deeply misunderstood, was a ticking storm. The sky that morning held no warning. The zoo gates opened like they always did. Rosa smiled, just like she always did. And Cicip waited, behind steel and silence. But something was different. A sound. A pause. A call on the radio that was never answered. A scream that didn't echo back. What happened next would change everything. And leave questions that still haunt those who were there. It was a quiet Monday morning, May 29, 2017. A bank holiday. Calm skies. A peaceful stillness hovered over Hamerton Zoo Park in Cambridgeshire, England. Just after 8 a.m., Rosa King, one of the zoo's most devoted animal keepers, arrived early, as she often did. She wore her usual uniform. Pulled her hair back the same way. Checked in with staff. No alarms. No tension. Just another day. Or so it seemed. But something, unspoken, had already begun to shift. Her first task that morning was routine. Attend to the tiger enclosure. Feed. Clean. Observe. She had done it hundreds of times. No fear. No hesitation. Only familiarity. She always did that enclosure alone. Rosa knew the tigers better than anyone. Especially Cicip. No one questioned it. But maybe that was the tragedy. Because sometimes, familiarity can give way to false safety. Rosa stepped into the tiger enclosure. As she had done so many times before. But this time, something was different. According to official reports, Rosa entered alone. There were no other handlers nearby. No tranquilizers at the ready. Protocol, on paper, had been followed. But the wild doesn't read protocols. Inside that steel boundary, the rules don't belong to us. Then, a sharp sound. A garbled radio transmission. Cut short. In the control center, a keeper tried to reach Rosa once, then twice. No response. That's when the silence turned heavy. We knew something was wrong. It was just too quiet. No radio chatter. No movement. And then, the door. It hadn't been relocked. That door, meant to seal her safely in, had not been secured. And beyond it, was Cicip, a Malayan tiger. At 11:15 a.m., a code red was declared. Zoo staff scrambled toward the enclosure. Unsure of what they'd find. But nothing could have prepared them. Rosa lay motionless on the ground. She had sustained catastrophic injuries. Emergency services pronounced her dead at the scene. The zoo was evacuated. Authorities arrived. The world began to ask. How? How could one of the most experienced keepers, someone with such deep love and trust for these animals, become the victim? Were there warning signs? Was a latch overlooked? Were procedures followed too casually? Or was this just nature, reminding us that it never forgets what it is? But as the sun set on that terrible day, the real questions had only begun to rise. What failed? Who was responsible? And what did the silence of that morning truly conceal? It happened fast. But for those who were close enough to hear it, it felt like time shattered into pieces. There are no complete recordings. No direct witnesses. Only fragments. Sounds. Panic. What we do know begins with a scream. Staff nearby say they heard it, sharp, short, unmistakable. Then, silence. She didn't scream like she was startled. It was like something hit her hard. Then nothing. It was just gone. That was the last transmission from Rosa King. Immediately, confusion. One staff member tried to call back. Twice. No response. Seconds passed. Then came a call to control. We have a possible animal attack, Hamerton Zoo, tiger enclosure. Staff member down. We need emergency services now. By now, an emergency protocol was activated. But the lines between practice and reality blurred instantly. Inside the zoo, no one was sure where the tiger was positioned. No one knew if Rosa was alive. And yet, entering the enclosure posed another threat. Cicip, the male tiger, was still moving. According to internal statements, at least 2 keepers saw Rosa's body from outside the perimeter. But Cicip was standing guard, pacing near her. The dilemma in these moments is brutal. You want to help, but rushing in can escalate everything. For the tiger, it's instinct. For the staff, it's heartbreak. Armed with only sedation rifles, the response team hesitated, seconds ticking like hours. The vet on call wasn't yet on site. The zoo's tranquilizers weren't immediate acting. And Rosa wasn't moving. At 9:15 a.m., the zoo initiated a full internal lockdown. Visitors were ushered into buildings. Staff were restricted from the outer perimeters. And over the radio, no one had answers. But the silence inside the enclosure said enough. By the time emergency services arrived, Rosa was gone. At 9:33 a.m., responders officially pronounced her deceased. The zoo remained closed for the rest of the day. Families inside the cafe were told gently to remain calm. Visitors were never told the full story. Not then. But behind the locked gates, staff stood in shock, staring at the spot where Rosa had fallen, where everything had changed. She was gone. A vibrant, experienced zookeeper, beloved, respected. And the tiger was still alive. Now the question wasn't just what had happened, but why. Rosa King was gone. And the world had questions. Within hours of the tragedy, the zoo released a short statement, confirming the incident, acknowledging the loss, and promising a full investigation. But outside the gates, the public wanted more than condolences. Photos of Rosa began to circulate. A smiling woman. Passionate. Fearless. Standing beside the very animal that would end her life. And behind those headlines, grief began to settle, in every corner of the zoo. Within 24 hours, external inspectors and local authorities arrived. Their task was to understand how Rosa, a seasoned keeper, ended up alone, inside an enclosure with a free-moving tiger. 2 theories emerged early. 1. Human error. 2. Mechanical or system failure. At the center of both theories, a single steel gate. Records showed Rosa entered the enclosure for routine maintenance, standard procedure for the morning shift. But something was off. The internal gate that separates the tiger from the keepers was supposed to be locked. According to protocol, no human entry should be made unless the animal is confirmed secured in the holding den. That didn't happen. Did Rosa mistakenly believe the gate was secured? Was a visual check skipped? Was a sensor or latch faulty? No one could say for sure. The CCTV system inside the enclosure, partially obstructed by foliage, captured little more than flickers of motion. No clear footage of the moment of contact. No audio. Just a gap. And then, the tiger. It takes just one misread. 1 half-second decision. These protocols work, until one day, they don't. Experts reviewing the case found no evidence of intentional risk-taking. No deliberate oversight. Just, a devastating intersection of routine and unpredictability. The system had holes. And Rosa had trusted it. Inside the zoo, the silence grew heavier by the hour. Many of Rosa's colleagues left the premises that day and never returned. Some couldn't face the enclosure again. Others couldn't forgive the institution, or themselves. She was like the heartbeat of the team. And then, just like that, we lost her. and no protocol could bring her back. Counselors were brought in. The tiger, Cicip, was placed in isolation. And the zoo was shut indefinitely. Flowers and letters began to appear at the gates. Strangers cried. Colleagues wept quietly in corners. But the question still haunted every hallway. How did this happen to Rosa King? As days passed, public sympathy turned to scrutiny. Some asked why keepers were ever allowed to be in such close proximity without redundancy. Others questioned the enclosure's design, its blind corners and its unclear alarms. And many, with heavy hearts, asked the hardest question of all. Was Rosa's death preventable? The official investigation cited no criminal fault. But it did find lapses. In system checks. In enclosure design. And in human dependency on routine. The zoo director wrote, "We have lost one of our finest. Rosa King was more than a keeper. She was a protector, a mentor, and a friend. Rosa's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a reckoning. A reminder that even the most experienced, the most cautious, can fall victim to the smallest of oversights." In the wake of her passing, zoos across the country re-evaluated their protocols. Some redesigned enclosures. Others reinforced their communication systems. But no fix, no policy, could erase the loss. Only questions remained. When the news broke, it didn't stay local for long. By sunrise the next day, the entire world knew her name. Rosa King. Zookeeper. Conservationist. Daughter. Beloved soul of the sanctuary. From New York to Nairobi, news outlets covered the tragedy. Social media overflowed with condolences. She gave her life doing what she loved. Rest in peace, Rosa. The animals knew your heart. You were their protector. Now you are their guardian angel. Celebrities posted tributes. Conservationists shared photos. Former visitors uploaded video clips of Rosa educating schoolchildren by the tiger exhibit. She didn't just work at the zoo. She lived it. And when she died, it was as if an entire ecosystem lost its voice. On the third night, the zoo gates remained closed, but the space outside them filled with light. Visitors returned, not for the animals, but for her. Some brought candles. Others brought letters. A few brought their children to say goodbye to the lady who loved the tigers. My son asked if Rosa was going to heaven with the animals. I didn't know how to answer, but I said yes. I had to say yes. Behind the scenes, the loss ran even deeper. Her colleagues, too stunned to return to routine, struggled in silence. Some broke down at the sound of a tiger's roar. Others walked away and never came back. Grief counselors were brought in. The zoo offered private sessions. Still, some pain refused to be voiced. She was our anchor. We all watched her. Learned from her. I still hear her voice sometimes, reminding me to be calm, gentle. I'm not sure how to be here without her. Even the animals seemed to notice. The tiger, Cicip, was moved into holding. Sedated. Observed. He ate less. He roared less. He waited. Some said he seemed to be searching for her. Because for all the world's outcry, it was the animals who lost more than a zookeeper. They lost their mother. For the media, Rosa became a symbol of dedication, of passion, of the silent bond between humans and the wild. But for those who knew her, she was simply Rosa. The woman who remembered every animal's name. Who whispered to big cats and joked with small ones. Who once skipped lunch to sit beside a distressed lemur. because it had looked sad. She gave them everything. Her time, her patience, her love. And in the end, she gave her life. The zoo eventually reopened, quieter than before. But one enclosure remained empty. Visitors now stopped not just to see the animals, but to remember the keeper who walked among them with wonder. In the stories shared, in the tears shed, in the lives changed by her courage and care, Rosa's spirit lives on. In the rustle of the leaves, in the quiet eyes of every animal she ever cared for. She wasn't just part of the zoo. She was the zoo. Its heartbeat, its compassion, its voice in the silence. And now, though her life ended too soon, her legacy will never fade. She lived for the wild. She died protecting it. And now, one question still lingers in many hearts. What should happen to Cicip, the tiger who took her life? A symbol of danger, or a creature acting on instinct? Tell us what you believe. But above all, remember, Rosa loved him too, even in the end. In memory of Rosa King, 1984 to 2017.